Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are waking up and feeling awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great week out there so far. There's a good bit to talk about in this morning's video. The same pattern pretty much is in place, but there is a couple areas we need to speak on in detail. So the first thing we'll cover is today's weather. We'll speak on current conditions, the latest outlooks for today, and then we'll break down the country section by section. We'll zoom into a couple individual states for you folks that do run the higher risk of strong to severe thunderstorm activity. And then after we get done doing all that, we'll speak on the days to come throughout the rest of the work week, all the way till about Friday. We'll probably stop there. Some areas for Friday run a risk of severe weather that really hasn't seen much of this severe weather activity over the last several weeks. Have seen strong to severe storms, but a little bit of a higher risk is what I'm trying to say. And that is for folks in the Carolinas, Georgia, maybe all the way up into Virginia, maybe as far south as the northern sections of Florida. So we'll speak on that and what's driving it all. And we will give you some information on the tropics. I would say this is our first sort of full all-out update on the tropics so far for this year. Nothing concerning, but I'm watching something that potentially, very low probability of this happening, but this can happen this time of the year, but something that could get going over the next week. So I'll speak on it. I'm not going to get crazy detailed on that because there's no point in all that right now, but it's just a sign of things to come as we get deeper into the summer, as the tropics very slowly and gradually get a little bit more active. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below, and we will do a Bible devotion at the very end of the video. And if you notice a difference, if you didn't tune into yesterday morning's video, or the video that I did last night, there is a difference in my backdrop. I've switched rooms, and not going to get as detailed as I did on this in yesterday's videos, but I've switched rooms, and I got some big plans. Just check out last night's video if you want more details on it. If you're thinking, man, Mitch, this is a very boring backdrop, trust me, I got some things in the works to make it a little bit more interesting, and all that good stuff. Not going to lose the genuine, real homey feels of this channel, that's for sure. So let's get rocking and rolling. So this is the latest look at the radar, current conditions. We got blobs of rain, if you will, everywhere. We got an area of storm activity that's probably a little bit more, I would say, active. Some strong to severe storms. In fact, we do have severe thunderstorms right now ongoing across Louisiana. We actually had a tornado warning about 30 to 45 minutes ago from the time I'm making this video. We got a big area of rain making its way across areas east and west of the Appalachian Mountains, and including into the mountainous areas. Interesting weather setup called a CAD, cold air damming. That's what it stands for. Cooler air gets trapped east of the Appalachian Mountains. So it is going to be a chilly day for areas as far south as maybe like northeast Georgia, but the western Carolinas up through the western areas of Virginia. And we'll speak on that here in a bit. But we got a big area of just light to moderate rain across the Midwest also. The western U.S., it's pretty quiet, and the Northeast is pretty quiet. But as far as the Storm Prediction Center outlook, kind of a bimodal slight risk once again. And listen, I just want to get this on out here. There is a chance we're going to upgrade to an enhanced risk. The common theme over the last several days has been for us to upgrade from a slight to an enhanced risk in areas of Texas and just the southern plains. So that might happen. I just know I'm making this video as of around 6:50 a.m. So the Storm Prediction Center will drop another update, here in probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours. But as of right now, a slight risk gets all the way into southeast New Mexico, southwestern areas of Texas, and all the way to well south of San Antonio, Texas. And then we do have a slight risk across areas of the deep south. I mean, from a very small section of southeast Louisiana through southern areas of Mississippi, the entire southern half of Alabama, very small section of the Panhandle, Florida, all the way into central Georgia, Atlanta, all the way down to Macon, Albany, Columbus. You guys have a slight risk, level 2 out of 5, risk of severe weather, and we got the marginal risk, level 1 out of 5 in the dark green. Now, what's driving all this? There is a tornado threat in the deep south, a 2% risk. There's been quite a few tornado warnings throughout this past weekend across areas of Mississippi, and even Alabama. And I think we'll get it again throughout the next 24 hours. Also, at 2% risk of a tornado in the green, 2% risk of a tornado over here, and the entire slight risk area of Texas and areas of New Mexico. And then the wind threats in these areas, there is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour, and that is in that yellow area. The hail threats, once again, we're going to have a risk of, I lost my voice, a risk of giant hail over here in Texas. Thermodynamics support it. Cooler air aloft, surface temperature, surface conditions are hot, and this is pretty common when you have a risk of strong to severe thunderstorm activity in this area of the country. So if you live in the yellow area, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. The black outline region, which includes most of this region, there is a risk of significant sized hail, 2 inch in diameter or larger. And some of these hailstones, some of these storm chasers and just people who live in this region have been posting to social media are absolutely ridiculous. Seems like something you would watch out of like The Day After Tomorrow, some sort of weather catastrophe movie or something like that. But there's been some giant hail in this area. I mean, hail that looks like it could knock you out cold if it hits you in the head. But anyways, the risk of flash flooding in the yellow regions, there's a few areas to watch. One in Texas, one across the deep south, all the way into southeast North Carolina. Then one area up here, specifically just along and just west of the Appalachian Mountains. These yellow areas have a 15% risk of flash flooding occurring, so be aware of that. But as far as watches, warnings, and advisories, we do have these severe thunderstorm watches up across areas of the deep south, and flood watches in the green counties there. So we'll certainly watch out for those regions for some heavy rainfall. And there is even some flood watches up for like Wilmington, a couple counties in southeast North Carolina. But a broad look at things, we'll breeze through this pretty quick, and I'll try to mention because there's a lot of areas of moisture. But we started this morning, we got a lot of rain moving throughout areas of the Carolinas. We'll have sporadic downpours from Kentucky down to Tennessee, and then we'll have some additional thunderstorms that will try to develop maybe in the northern areas of South Carolina, some storms off the coastline. We got some storms in Florida. We got more just a steady rainfall up in North Carolina, Virginia, a lot of smaller things ongoing. But the big thing today is this area of storms that'll cruise across Mississippi, Alabama, and then eventually into Georgia later this evening. How much will it hold together as it makes it into South Carolina? Well, this is like, the midnight hours, and still has a pretty solid line of storms surging through South Carolina. So it might be a loud night and just continuous rounds of rain up here in the mid-Atlantic. But closer look at my friends here in Mississippi and Alabama, and then we'll show you Georgia and South Carolina. This is where we have that slight risk for today. And what's going to happen is already about late morning, it's 11 a.m. Of your time here, and we got here in the splotches of yellow, orange, red, and pink, just heavy storm activity, some that could be strong to severe. But what we'll watch for is as we're getting into the early afternoon hours is a line of storms that will try to develop, and these will have some broad rotation. Some of them will tighten up and produce a couple tornado warnings in Alabama and probably Mississippi. But, Model Guides isn't going to nail this, but they do like the idea of just kind of a sweeping complex of storms throughout Mississippi and Alabama. And as we start to get into 4 p.m., 5 p.m., still storms ongoing, and especially Alabama, letting up a little bit in Mississippi, but southern Alabama especially looks to have some severe thunderstorm activity around 5, 6, 7, and then a lot of this activity starting to move into Georgia at this point. But, could have additional thunderstorm activity near Tupelo into northern areas of Alabama later this evening. And I still think there'll just be some scattered downpours and scattered storms, even into the overnight hours across Alabama and Mississippi. Georgia and South Carolina, we're going to deal with a lot of it's going to be a weird day in areas of northern Georgia and the northern and northwestern areas of South Carolina. It'll be kind of one of those days where you'll just get a kind of a misty rain, even if there's nothing really showing up on radar. So, for example, nothing really showing up in Athens, but you could be getting a mist. It's just how these cold air damming boundaries set up. And if you're on the cooler side of that, you're going to get cloudy, misty kind of weather. But this is 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., scattered downpours, a lot of light rain probably ongoing that you can't really see. Could get some strong to severe thunderstorms that develop here in the low country of South Carolina. Warm, moist air down there. You got Columbia points north, a little bit more stable, cooler air. But here comes this line of storms. This is 8 p.m. Line of storms moving through Columbus, Macon, storm activity near Statesboro, Albany. And then these storms blast through Augusta. It's around 11 p.m. Will these storms still be intact? That's the big question. So we got to figure that one out. But we start to get to about midnight, 1 a.m. We got storms moving through the low country, but they're weaker up here in the northern areas of South Carolina. And I think that's just because you got cooler, more stable air up there. So moving forward here, still trying to get adjusted to this area, guys. So if you see me moving around, kind of arching my back more, everything's lifted up a little bit higher on this setup. So I'm still trying to adjust things, and there's going to be probably a good couple week adjustment period with this new move. And I'm glad I've chosen to do it during the summer instead of like the prime time of the winter or hurricane season. It's all planned out for a reason, guys. But anyways, I'm starting off this morning. We do have a big area of rain starting to surge up through southern areas of Ohio. It'll be a rainy day here in West Virginia, eventually into Maryland. It'll be a rainy evening. Nothing too crazy, just solid, areas of light to moderate rain. And eventually, as we're getting into tomorrow morning, a lot of this will begin to take over most of PA. Some heavier rain showers are possible in areas of eastern Ohio, but just a solid heavy rainfall, at least moderate to heavy rainfall, begins to take over the mid-Atlantic. And some of this is, has embedded pockets of heavy rain. This is getting into tomorrow morning. But most of New England, the Northeast, will be pretty okay today. Most of the activity is to your south. Now, the south central U.S. here, we have this round of thunderstorms moving through Louisiana right now. This wall starting to move into Alabama and Mississippi. But eventually, as we're starting to get into this evening, we start to see some thunderstorm activity in southwest Texas, and we'll have to see if this kind of grows up scale later tonight into more of a complex MCS, mesoscale convective kind of system here, and sweeps across the southern half of Texas. Then by the time we get into tomorrow morning, we'll probably have some thunderstorms deep down in Texas. But it doesn't look as bad as what we've seen over the last couple days, but just taking a closer look at some of these areas here, we start to get into this afternoon, got some thunderstorm activity. You see some storms south of Pecos. Some storms could very well be up towards Hobbs. It's not really showing much. Eastern New Mexico has been an area that's been, having some tornadoes the last couple of days. Nothing catastrophic or terrible or anything like that, not destroying towns, but we've had a couple tornadoes in eastern New Mexico. Could be another day of that. But you see this area of storms sort of between Pecos, south of Midland, San Angelo. We could certainly get some storms in this area. And these are the storms around 9 p.m. that could produce very large hail, some tornadoes. It's a lot of storm chasers are in this area and have been over the last couple of days, and they'll be down here again today. It's been some wonky storms, and that's how it is in this area of the country this time of the year. Very light flow. There's not enough kind of directional wind shear to really get tornadoes popping off left and right off these storms, but there's so much thermodynamic energy, meaning it's very hot, and the lapse rates, meaning there's rapid cooling aloft, really support very large hail and just a lot of instability. And this really gets these storms going. So, watch out anywhere in this map you see. If you get hit by one of these storms, you're going to know it. Hopefully you do not, but someone's going to get hit. But we start to move a little bit deep down in Texas. Nothing going on this morning, this afternoon. Then later tonight, we got to watch some storms. It could move out of northern areas of Mexico. This is like 1 a.m. You see some storms kind of west of San Antonio. And then we're starting to move into 4 a.m., 5 a.m., loud early morning hours in San Antonio potentially. But, we start to wake up at around 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. We got a lot of storm activity along the southeast coastline of Texas. We'll see if this is actually how it materializes. But up here in the north central U.S., a lot of just rain showers dancing around. This is kind of right in the middle of the afternoon today. We got showers really anywhere across these states that you see, especially Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, maybe areas of the Dakotas and Nebraska. just annoying showers, just kind of drifting around. Nothing severe, nothing super heavy. As we're waking up tomorrow morning, though, could have a more organized area of rain in Illinois, but not an active day, but definitely just a cloudy, dreary day up here, and it'll keep the temperatures down too. The western U.S. could have some storms popping off the Rockies, the Front Range once again. Maybe a little bit of precipitation up here in Wyoming. But, outside of that, just some energy kind of riding down the Front Range here, east of it. But, outside of that, not a whole lot going on here. But temperature-wise, it's nice in the Northeast, 60s, 70s. But if you're being bothered by the cloud cover and all the rain, it's cooler. For example, there's areas in West Virginia, heck, maybe even the foothills of North Carolina that will not get out the 40s and 50s today. And listen, you see this little weird kind of dip in lower temperatures. That's your cold air damping. This could even happen in May, guys. I mean, sometimes it can happen in early June. But there is going to be a ridiculous temperature boundary, I think, somewhere in northern Georgia and the Carolinas. It's going to separate a very cool day for late May standards and a hot summer-like day down here in southern Georgia and Florida. But you see these pockets of cooler air. One's right here, too, across the middle of the country. This is for all that rain, light rain I talked about. And then the western U.S. is heating on up. I mean, it's everywhere's around average to above average temperature-wise. So now, moving forward here, looking at tomorrow's severe weather threats, not a whole lot different than today's. I mean, you got a marginal risk of severe weather, level 1 out of 5, that goes from the plains of Colorado down into the southern high plains of New Mexico and Texas, dips down deep in Texas. We got a slight risk, though, for areas of eastern New Mexico and western Texas, and the marginal risk that does extend all the way into areas of the deep south and South Carolina and southeast North Carolina. And you look at the tornado threat, you got a 2% right here. Look at the wind threats, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour there. And the hail threat right now is just at a 15% risk, no significant risk. So I'll flip it back to this. What about excessive rainfall? Just kind of a unorganized 5% risk in the green color of flash flooding occurring. Not a big deal. Start to get, though, into day 3. Which is Thursday. Don't want to get my days mixed up. Don't want to think today's Monday. But we have a marginal risk kind of in the same areas. I have a slight risk tomorrow. This is for Thursday. And we have a marginal risk, level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather across the Gulf coastline and, a few hours inland off the coastline all the way to the southeast coast. So right now, just a small risk of severe weather. And I could see this uptrending to a slight risk. But I do think the flash flooding threat will increase as we get into Thursday. So here across the deep south in these yellow areas, basically here along the interstate corridor here, we have, and this is Jackson, Meridian, Vicksburg, over to Montgomery, Columbus. We have a 15% risk of flash flooding occurring within 25 miles in the given location. But I do want to look at Friday. Spend a couple minutes or extra minute or two on this. Now, we have a 15% risk, already a slight risk, level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather for areas of Georgia, South Carolina, basically the Carolinas. So if you live in this yellow area, this includes, Raleigh, Durham, down through Fayetteville, Columbia, Florence, Orangeburg, Augusta, all the way down into Macon, and gets into central Georgia. This is a 15% risk of severe weather for Friday within 25 miles in a given location. I do think there'll be a larger area that runs a risk of severe weather for this time frame. But I really favor a line of storms in this area, with maybe multi-clusters of storms. But the pattern looks like this. So this is starting off tomorrow. What we have is kind of this mid-level trough up here, sort of anchored here. This is creating enough flow across this region. It's not a lot, but you see, if I put my cursor over here, you see how it says 20, 30 knots of mid-level flow. This creates enough shear to get some of these storms going with little embedded pieces of energy that gives us more intense little surface features that could bring us more organized areas of storms in certain areas. So this is just enough flow. Now, there is a boundary up here because of this trough, so there's probably some sort of cold front. Well, there is a cold front right up into here. This is separating moist Gulf air with just drier air and higher up in latitude. So enough flow right here. You mix that with this, and these are your dew points at the same time period. This is tomorrow afternoon, and dew points are in the 60s and 70s. So a lot of moist air setting up shop across the southern tier of the country with just enough flow going over this region. So you're going to have a risk of strong to severe storms across these areas. Now, we start to move into Thursday. Continue to do what we've been doing. This is getting into Thursday afternoon, prime time of the day. A little bit more flow, okay, but cold front probably beginning to sag down a little bit more. You can see with higher bouts of flow here in over 30 to 50 knots, that tells me that there's some sort of boundary moving down, enhancing the flow. So I'll move and look at dew points in this area, and we start to move down into Thursday afternoon. And sure enough, there's a little bit more of a surge of dry air pushing up against this moist air, but still very moist air, surging up as some sort of boundary right into here. So a lot of moist air for the deep south. This will get areas of storms ongoing. And if you notice for Thursday, remember there's that slight risk of flash flooding. And it makes sense when you look at dew points are in the 70s across a lot of these areas, 60s and 70s. So deep tropical moisture from the Gulf here, and enough flow overspreading this region. So we're just probably going to have a lot of rain and storm activity across this area, and just enough flow riding over that moist air. Now, we start to kick it off into Friday, and we're going to stop here. What you'll notice here is this trough begins to dig down. So this enhances the flow across the southeast. You see these deeper shades of purple. This is 40 to 60 knots of flow at 18,000 feet. So, I mean, winds at 18,000 feet getting close to interstate speed. So this is going to create a lot more wind shear for storm activity. And this is probably going to push a line of storms and just create a lot of forcing for thunderstorm activity, create a lot of instability. So this is digging down, cold front really being the forcing mechanism here. But where are the dew points in this time frame? So you'll notice as we start to get into Friday morning, and then this is Friday afternoon. Big push of dry air moving in at this point. We got dew points in the 50s now in areas of the deep south, the mid-south. So, we got these dew points in the 50s. Probably won't get the job done for any kind of crazy thunderstorm activity. But if you notice, still dews in the 60s and 70s all the way up the I-95 corridor. Pockets of dew points in the 70s. So this is tons of moist air to get the job done. You mix that with this flow kind of overlapping this moist air, and we're going to have overlapping conditions for severe weather. Now, we'll stop it at Friday, and another way to look at this is, and the Euro does a good job at trying to indicate where storms are going to be, but it's not always going to be exact, right? So we look at Wednesday morning. I'm sorry, this is tomorrow afternoon, so Wednesday afternoon. A lot of thunderstorm activity across the western deep south, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. But we start to move it into Thursday. A lot of thunderstorm activity across the deep south into the Carolinas. But, will these storms, are we going to get widespread severe thunderstorm activity? We just got to see. I think there's a possibility for it. Some of these storms are going to be strong to severe, but I don't think it'll be a widespread severe type day across the deep south. I think there's just going to be rounds of tropical rainfall. So heavy rains will aid in that flooding threat across the deep south for Thursday. Now, I want you to watch as we get into Friday. See, it looks like you have more intense thunderstorm activity. This is Friday about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you see these splotches of red and orange and yellow. This, to me, favors some sort of organized cluster of storms surging throughout Georgia and the Carolinas, maybe as far north as Virginia, as far south as Florida. And this will make for a pretty active Friday, I think, as far as thunderstorm activity, strong to severe thunderstorm activity across the southeast with a cold front moving in. So we just got to watch that for sure. And we're going to stop there. And what I'll mention here is a lot of rainfall could fall between now and around this time next week. And honestly, I could just look at the 120. This is just between now and 8 a.m. Sunday. So a few to several inches of rain could fall across the deep south. And we move it a little bit further up the East Coast. A lot of rain across the Carolinas and Virginia. You notice, it's not anything that screams excessive rainfall, I would say, but there will be a risk of it, quite literally. So, last thing I want to talk about here is the tropics. I will start off by showing you the graphic from the National Hurricane Center. I mean, no tropical activity is expected within the next 7 days. So there's nothing being indicated. There's no lemons, no yellow areas, orange, red areas, or tropical systems out here. But I'm watching something. This is what I'm watching. Sometimes this time of the year, when you get cold fronts that are a little bit uncommon, but they happen every year, but they'll sag all the way down into the Gulf. And sometimes they'll stall out for a couple of days and they'll pop off some energy in the warming waters of the Gulf down here and maybe off the coast of the southeast. Now, these cold fronts are not going to dip all the way down to the Caribbean this time of the year, and they hardly do any time of the year. But we start to get, I'm going to start this around next Monday morning, June the 2nd. You can see it up here, right? And the yellow areas, I don't want this to confuse you guys, but just think of this as energy in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, about 18,000 feet up, 500 millibars. Make sure we are on the 500 millibar map. We are. So as we're moving forward here, I want you to just kind of watch this area, okay? Something tries to, and this is just one operational run of the arrow, nothing to get too crazy about. Something tries to get going on this particular run about 7 to 8 days out. And there's a little bit of a spin, and this is the mid-levels too. You can see the wind barb sort of twirling around here. And as we're getting between the 7 to 10 day period, something tries to get organized here, down here in the Bay of Campeche. So I think some people say the Bay of Campeche. I always say the Bay of Campeche. But anyways, down here in the Southern Gulf and the Bay Area right here, something tries to get going. And listen, this happens. And what's also interesting to look at is you got another area right here. Now, this is getting well past 10 days. But these are the little features you watch here. Little spins here. And this normally happens the most in this time of the year or either in late in hurricane season. Where, in early hurricane season, you're still, getting occasional cold fronts pushing down, and then they stop doing that throughout the summer. And then you start to get later in the fall, and then you start to get the cold fronts that return, and, same thing can happen. But energy kind of gets trapped in the open waters of the Gulf, and something can pop off here. Now, as far as what this looks like with precipitation, I mean, you saw that energy Monday morning. In response to precipitation, I mean, it doesn't really show anything. And it's not always going to show anything at the surface. But what's interesting to me is that it eventually does. Between that 7 to 10 day period, you see this big blob of moisture right here. It's interesting. It tries to even pop off an L here, a low pressure central load, and eventually just kind of collides into Mexico. So it's just little things to watch. It's just a sign of, hey, we're getting a little bit closer. And of course, the GFS is probably going to overdo this. The one last night showed an all-out tropical storm hitting Florida. I haven't even looked at it. Let's just see what this morning's GFS shows. And it does have some energy dancing around there in the Caribbean. But it looks like it gets this energy over Central America and actually tries to become a bit of a Pacific storm. But here's a low pressure here, and this is getting past 10 days. And yeah, I mean, it develops an all-out tropical storm in areas of the Gulf. And this is like June 10th. But this is going to happen. And what people are going to do with this, and I'll leave it with this, is people are going to overhype this kind of stuff. And I talked about this in yesterday morning's video. There's people out there in the world that hyper-focus on the tropics, hyper-focus on winter, or either hyper-focus on severe weather. I do it all. A lot of people who do it, I do it all. I love talking about the tropics, but I'm never going to hype anything up that's not that doesn't need to be hyped up. When it's time to really sound the alarm, you guys know I'll sound the alarm. But you're going to see a lot of this stuff. Just be careful what you share on social media and stuff like that. And, you look at the run before this and it's everywhere. I mean, so we'll continue to try to figure this one out. But I'm done with that. Let's jump into this and let's create a stopping point. I don't like that stopping point. Just like that. Okay. So a quick Bible devotion and then we'll get on with our day, guys. But this morning we're in Psalm chapter 69, verse 13. It says, "But as for me, Lord, my prayer to you is for a time of favor, and your abundant, faithful love, God, answer me with your sure salvation, answer me with your sure salvation. So this is really speaking in prayer about prayer and trusting in his timing. And, we never want to stop going to the Lord in prayer. Sometimes he's going to answer our prayers immediately. Sometimes it might be a few years down the road. Sometimes it's right in the middle. I think we all know that. And I think sometimes we get frustrated because we think that he's not listening. He's always listening, guys. He's always listening. And I've wondered the same thing. I mean, I'm not, any different from anybody else when it comes to that. But, as I've obviously grown, I realize he is listening. But I've trusted in his perfect timing. And that's what, I say here. Even when we're going through very difficult things, we got to trust in God's perfect timing. And I think I talked a little bit about this maybe a week or so ago. I think sometimes God wants us to sort of marinate on what we got going on. And to us, sometimes that's kind of suffering for a while. And, I know that sounds brutal, and you might think, well, why would God want us to suffer? And I don't think he does, but I think he wants us to grow in that difficult time that we're going through and sort of grow through it, because you're supposed to extract something out of those hard times. But folks, prayer is powerful. And listen, I'll tell you this, and maybe this is going off scripture a little bit, if you will. The devil will try to come at you when you're praying. He'll try to make you rush your prayers. He does it to me every single day. Every day. Even when I'm reading over your prayer request that you put in the comments, he wants me to rush through it. But I tell you, the most common time he tries to come at me is when I'm laying down in bed, when me and my family are saying our prayers and everything like that. He tries to let that fatigue will get to you. The tiredness is like, man, I just want to get to bed. Let's just rush through this. But, it's important to do your best to try to really spend special time on each prayer. I don't, maybe not 30 minutes on each prayer request, but you get what I'm saying. Don't just, prayer in a broad way. Sometimes we're in a position where that's all we can do. One thing that I always say, don't say I'm going to pray for you, and then you never end up praying for them. If you really think you're going to forget, say a quick prayer right then and there. Or maybe if the person's right there in front of you, and listen, I would love to get better at this, because it makes you a little bit uncomfortable. It might make the other person a little bit more uncomfortable. But if you say, hey man, I'm going to pray for you, or hey friend, I'm going to pray for you, maybe do it right then and there. Put your hand on them and pray for them. And that might make an uncomfortable situation. But you also, that might plant a seed also, So it just goes back to how everything connects. I really think everything connects, and he made it like that for a reason. And the more I grow, the more I see that. So appreciate all the support. I know sometimes my Bible devotions can maybe be a little repetitive. Nobody said that in the comments, but I feel like they can sometimes. But sometimes I feel like and maybe this isn't the right word for it, but almost recycling the same information, it helps us. I know I got a buddy of mine, his name's Chris, he's a great friend of mine, and we talk just about every day, and we just recycle the same information, and we never get tired of it. And, I know it helps. But, hey guys, very excited about the changes with this channel. I'm not going to promise anything. I mentioned last night that I want to live stream, but listen, I'm not going to say it's 100% going to happen. It might not ever happen. One thing that I really would like to make happen is try to get my DSLR camera and replace my webcam. That'll make things more crisp. I just would like to do that. I just need to continue to educate myself on what to do tech-wise. And I'm also going to get some shelves right here and just continue to improve the setup little by little. But I'm not going to rush anything. I'm trusting in God's timing. I'm really trying to be sensitive to what he has to say about this situation. And there's a lot of things that needs to happen before I even consider about doing this full time. And it's all in his will. And at the end of the day, we just keep on going and trusting in his will. But appreciate you all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. God bless.